For those who are here listening, inside, so people sitting outside, yeah, goodness.
Hi, people outside.
Hey, people outside, that's Sherry, so Sherry, Karlo, and Karlo Estates.
Hi.
Our annual check-in, one of these days we need her to come here to Sudbury and come and drink with us here.
Yes.
Yeah, she's living in live for Prince Edward County, just trying to showcase the wines that we have available for flights this evening. Some pretty big reds, if you're a red wine drinker, which is a lot of fun. It's up to you if you want to stand, it's only gonna be about 15 minutes, so you can either that or you can sit closer if you like. Just to give us a little bit of introduction on what's been going on at the winery in the last year, what's coming up, things to look forward to, any other little tidbits about the wines so that you have kind of a background on what they specialize in. All right, Sherry, what you got?
All right. Well, I know one of the wines we're featuring this evening is our Three Witches, the 2021 Little Bug White. Trying to get it to zoom in so you can see it. There we go. It's backwards, but hey. So this is probably our most popular white wine over and above our bubble. And it is an assemblage or an assemblage of 3 different grape varietals, which of course is why it's called the Three Witches. So this is Semillon, which is Bordeaux's answer to an oaked, actually it's Sauvignon Blanc. So that's almost like a green grape that has a lot of citrus and green grass to it. It also has Pinot Gris, which adds citrus and a lot of acidic backbone to the wine, making it very crisp and refreshing, especially great for the patio. And it has Gewürztraminer, which is a floral wine that has a lot of tropical fruit and floral aromatics. So lots of flowers on the nose. So lots going on, and it makes it a really versatile wine. It works well for the patio, of course, because it's crisp and refreshing. It's also quite smooth, so it works well as a social wine at a cocktail party, or just if you want to just enjoy a glass of wine. You don't have to pair food with it, but it is also a dry wine, so it works well as a dinner wine and pairs with a lot of different kinds of food. So a really great wine to enjoy with food and on a patio. So it's perfect for wander. This is so popular that we are down to our last 2 cases actually, and the next vintage will be released around July 11th, sometime around there. So I know that you guys are running low on this as well. So this is one of the last opportunities that you'll have in Sudbury to try that particular vintage, because as I say, we're about to sell out. It's really, really a popular wine. People love it.
Well, it's a good thing I'm going down there at the end of July, so I can kind of pick up some then, right?
Yeah, so you can try the next vintage, and that is going back to our original blend, I believe, of Semillon, Sauvignon Blanc, and dry Gewürztraminer. It's always a really, really popular wine. So I hope you like it as much as we do.
Yes. Oh yeah, no, I always loved it. It's always been a hit and a good seller here for sure.
Yeah, so that's what I'm having right now. So it's in my glass. And then I know other than that, we are featuring all of our stepping stones to our Holy Grail wine, which is called Sextus. And we just had our big Sextus party on July 6th at 6 o'clock, trying to make it all 666. And so we have stepping stones that go up to that. So the first is the Gemini. So this is a left bank Bordeaux blend of Cabernet Franc and Merlot. So in Bordeaux, of course, there's a river that runs through it. And on one side, there's more, on the left side, there's more Cabernet Sauvignon and Cabernet Franc planted. And on the right side of the river, there is more Merlot planted. So when it's called a left bank blend, you know that it'll lead with a cab of some sort. And in this case, it's Cabernet Franc, which adds a lot of smokiness to the wine. And then the Merlot is used for length of finish and smoothness. It's a really great base for a bigger bodied Bordeaux wine to give it length of finish and complexity and smoothness. So it's quite lovely. And this is a very small batch. We only did 2 barrels of this wine. So once it sells out, it sells out. And basically the way we do Sextus is all 6 of the original Bordeaux grape varietals. that were decreed by Napoleon III before the First World Fair to be the grapes worthy of being planted in Bordeaux. And those first classification wineries were actually classified by Napoleon III. So he said that there should only be Cabernet Franc, Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, Malbec, Petit Verdot, and Carmenere planted in Bordeaux. But then in the late 1800s, there was a phylloxera epidemic where this root louse was eating all of the rootstock and almost completely wiped out the entire French wine industry. So I don't know whether it was just lucky forethought or if it was trying to protect the vines, but all of these vines were shipped to Chile. And they thought they had lost the Carmenere in the transaction, and they thought it was extinct. So in Bordeaux, there's no more Carmenere planted at all. But in the 1990s, there was one vineyard of what they thought was Merlot that kept ripening before any other vineyard. So finally, when DNA testing became a little bit more easily accessible, they had it DNA tested, and they discovered that this one vineyard that kept ripening before any other vineyard was actually the long lost Carmenere. So the wine world rejoiced. It got repropagated up through the United States into BC. And now Karlo Estates is the only winery to have a 1 acre commercial planting in Eastern Canada, which allows us to make our Holy Grail wine, which is Sextus. And here is a picture of the Sextus bottle. So we do different Celtic tattoos for this line, and each of the tattoos represents how many wines are in the bottle. So in this case, there are 6 knots in this knot. And that represents the fact that there's Cabernet Franc, Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, Malbec, and Petit Verdot, and Carmenere. So this is extremely rare, actually, mostly in France, in the first growth Bordeaux wineries. When they make a 5 Bordeaux blend, it's released for close to $1,500 a bottle. So this one is currently selling for $125 a bottle. If you buy a bottle, you're automatically entered into Club Sextus, and then you get invited into different private club member only parties and tastings, like doing a library reserve tasting. Anyway, so once this is made, eventually, obviously, we run out of something. And of course, it's usually the Carmenere. So once that gets run out of, then we move on to the next level down, which is the Cabernet, is the Quintus. So now we have 5 of the 6 Bordeaux grape varietals. So it's Cabernet Franc, Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, Malbec, Petit Verdot, and Carmenere. And then this year, one thing that's new is we're going to be releasing the final missing piece of this equation, and we're going to be releasing Quatris. So it'll be only 4 of the 6 Bordeaux grape varietals. And then I believe tonight you also have the triumvirate available, which is 3 of the 6. So this time it's Cabernet Franc, Merlot, and with the addition of Malbec. And then, of course, then there was the Gemini, which I showed you earlier, and that's just the Cabernet Franc and the Merlot. Now, it's not like we just do the same blend and it's minus 1 wine. We actually do bench trials to figure out exactly the right ratio for each wine to have the wine show off the best characteristics of that wine. So each blend is different percentages of the different varietals in the wines. And so the Quintus usually gets released in time for Christmas, because it's important to have Quintus for Christmas. And this was only been made 5 times before. And that one is Cabernet Franc, Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, Malbec, Petit Verdot, and Carmenere. In all cases, all the wines are made as individual varieties. We make sure that they're really beautiful wines on their own. And then we do those bench trials to figure out that perfect ratio. And then we blend them to have each varietal kind of fill in the holes of the next for that perfect pairing, for that perfect ratio. So using each varietal to kind of fill in the holes of the next and make the smoothest, longest taste profile possible. So yeah, this is our signature Bordeaux series. And a lot of the wineries, I mean, we do make award-winning Chardonnays and Pinot Noirs in the county. Actually, we just had the editor of Decanter magazine come by yesterday, and he tasted a vertical of our estate Chardonnay and our estate Pinots and was furiously writing notes. So we're crossing our fingers that we're going to see something in Decanter magazine about Karlo Estates in Prince Edward County. But my late husband, Richard, really believed that because the county is on a similar latitude of Bordeaux, that we should be able to grow Bordeaux grape varietals in Canada as well. And because our soil is actually 4 times as old as Bordeaux, that we should be able to get 4 times as much complexity is the theory in our wines. And it's already starting to happen, even though the wines are not fully mature. A vine becomes fully mature at 25 years, and we are now at I think our oldest vines are 17-year-old vines, and we're already getting international recognition for our wines. We have buyers in Japan, in the Netherlands. We've had interest from England and China and India. And we're getting international awards through the International Wine Awards through Wineline. And we just picked up some more medals from the All Canadian Wine Championships, and we're just waiting to hear back on the Ontario Wine Awards. And so they're doing really well. So it really speaks to the quality of the terroir in Prince Edward County. So we're quite happy with that. I'm blathering on, so I'm going to give you a chance to speak.
You're not blathering on. That's why we got you in here. I want you to share all that, and it's good that you're getting the opportunity to sort of showcase. I mean, yes, you've always been award winning, but it's not subsiding. Like every year there's something new and someone else is discovering you, especially considering that your wines aren't available in the LCBO. And it's right. It is just like you need to know and know county wines and know that you're there and hearing about you through word of mouth. And like just that, like being able to have that success on its own without having like something like the LCBO behind you. So you're doing it all by yourself, which is even more of an achievement. I'm not going to knock the other VQA wines at all, but the fact that you got that recognition already, right? Just by, you just produce good stuff and the rest fills in the blanks, right? Everything else just happens.
Like we just focus on making the best wine that we possibly can. And when we focus on giving a really excellent experience, making sure that we have great people and that those great people are treated well and rewarded well, and making the best wine we can, then the money just kind of follows. So if we have a great place, great people, and a great product, then profit shows up on its own. So
right.
That's pretty cool.
Okay, so give us a sneak peek. What's coming up next? What have you got on the horizon that might be new and interesting?
Well, we actually have a really small, I think we only have like 2 barrels of a single varietal Semillon coming out. And we are only the second winery to be represented by Opimian, which is Canada's largest private wine club. They have over 10,000 members, and they used to be called the Opimian Wine Society, and they were like super snobby because they never would ever consider having a Canadian wine in their portfolio. But they took on Pearl Morissette as their first winery, and then they took us on as their second. So that was a major coup for us. And we are, I think, reserving one of the barrels for the Opimian Club. So if anyone at Wander is interested in getting some of that Semillon, you can order privately through Wander, because we haven't decided yet if we're putting it out to the general public, because there is so very little of it. So it's another example of you have to be in the know. And yeah, we're actually one of the largest wineries in the county. We make 9,000 cases a year, but we sell out of everything that we make. And quite often people get on, they buy our wines ahead of time so that they make sure that they get the wines when they're released, because we have certain varieties that we hope to never sell out of. The Three Witches was one of them, but you can see it was a little more popular than we anticipated, because we have a little, about a month gap in between when this one's going to sell out and the next one's released. We'll probably have about a week and a half gap, but there's other we make about 27 different wines, and a lot of them are small batch. So quite often our clients will fall in love with something, and then they say, I want to make sure I get my 2 or 4 or however many cases of this when it comes out next. So they buy it ahead of time, which has been really great because it helps us, you know, be able to focus on what we do best, and the cash flow helps us to focus on our craft. So hopefully it's a win-win for the customer. They get exceptional wines that they love, and it helps us to support our habit of winemaking.
Well, I said, I know that we always end up having like stragglers of bottles left every time that we have shipments in here. So I know that they're well received here as well. I don't
Nice
think
to
we
hear.
have questions or anything. Oh, Norm's got a question.
Just something about the soil being 4 times older than before. I don't know if I
Sorry, I couldn't hear the question.
I was asking about, you were referencing about how the soil is 4 times older than Bordeaux. So you
Yes.
just want to elaborate on it a little bit more because he never heard of that before.
Yeah, so our soils are very similar to Burgundy and Bordeaux, France, because it's limestone clay loam with calcareous, meaning that there's crustaceans, skeletals in the limestone. And limestone is basically just fossilized coral reef, which proves that the county used to be part of an inland sea bed, and Lake Ontario is part of that whole system. Like the whole Great Lakes is part of that whole ancient seabed. But when they do carbon testing on the limestone here, the limestone in Burgundy is from 100,000 years ago, but ours is actually from 400,000 years ago. So it's actually 4 times as old as the inland seabed that everybody's growing on in Bordeaux. And unfortunately, with climate change, our temperatures are getting a little bit warmer here. So we are finding it really easy to grow. Like we have the only Malbec in Prince Edward County, and of course the only Carmenere. And we don't have, a lot of people thought we were nuts when we planted it, but we're not having any trouble ripening it at all. In fact, the Malbec that we grow is more prolific than any of our Chardonnay or Pinot Noir or any of the other French varieties that we grow. So it really likes it here. And I think that's partly because of the terroir, because of that limestone soil, and the minerality that is in our wines that are so classically county comes from that limestone itself, because minerality is described as a saline quality, like swallowing if you ever go swimming in the ocean and you swallow a mouthful of ocean water and you get that graininess of that saltiness, that is a great way of describing minerality, which is coming from that limestone soil. So so the thinking is, if our soils are 4 times as old, then hopefully that means that the wines will be 4 times as complex. But you know, it's just a theory, so we're just going to have to keep drinking the wine and comparing them to try to figure it out.
Well, I like that kind of experiment. Yeah, some volunteers, we'll keep testing it out every year and we'll kind of letting you know. How's that?
That sounds really great. And I believe the other wine that you have on offer tonight is our Van Alstyne Red.
Yes. It's phenomenal with our chocolate toast, by the way.
Yes, it's a really beautiful fortified port style wine. We're not allowed to call it port because in 2012, Portugal sanctioned the term port. So port has to officially come from Portugal to be considered a port, whereas we can call it fortified, which nobody knows what that means, or we call it a port style. So fortified means that we've made it stronger using, or forto means strong, and we've made it stronger using alcohol. So the way a regular table wine is made is the yeast either is commercial pitched yeast, meaning that the winemaker orders some yeast online and it comes to them, and they can dictate what the taste profile will be of that wine depending on which commercial yeast they use. But what we like to do is actually do a wild fermentation. So we're using the yeasts that appear just naturally in the vineyard. So there's yeasts that are floating around everywhere all the time. And when you're using a wild fermentation, there's probably over 2,000 different kinds of yeast varietals. So you get a lot more complexity because each yeast strain tastes slightly different. And you get a more authentic taste of place when you're doing it that way, because the yeasts are what are occurring here naturally in our own terroir. So that's a really fun way of having more of a 100% terroir experience. We even have some of barrels that are Prince Edward County oak barrels grown in county terroir as well. So you get like a really great experience. And then also our wines are very non-interventional. So our wines, we created the first vegan certified wine in the world. So we don't use any animal products in the production of our wine. And we also do as little intervention as possible. So we use our winemakers' palates to just continually be tasting the wines at least once a month as they're developing. And then they just make small adjustments here and there to keep them on the rails. And an adjustment might be aerating a wine, because if one of the bad yeasts is winning, then you're getting like a stinky taste in the wine. So if you oxygenate the wine, it helps the good yeasts overcome the bad yeasts, and so you can pump up good tastes that you like as the wine is developing. So we just do things like that, and as a result we have very little additives in our wine. Quite often we have customers give us feedback that they're not getting hangovers from their wine. I keep telling them they're not drinking enough, but but it's partly because we don't use we've used very little sulfites. There's also, there's another, if Sax was here, he'd be able to tell me, but there's another preservative that commercial wineries put into their wines that gives a lot of people a headache. I wish I could remember what it is now. It'll come back to me and I'll have to email it to you. But we don't use any of that stuff. We just basically make the wine and we bottle the wine, and that's about it. And so we're getting a lot of feedback from critics that our wines are very clean on the palate. They're very fruit forward. And then clients say, oh, is that why I don't get hangovers from Karlo wine? But again, I tell them you need to be drinking more wine.
Gotta have at least once in a while.
Yeah, have another glass.
Well, I appreciate you zooming in on this lovely Thursday. You can be sitting outside. I am anxious every time I keep looking at your speakeasy behind you. I haven't been there in a while. Yay, I love that room. I remember when it was just like 2 sofas. Remember you got your first 2 sofas? And it was like over tucked in the corner. I can't wait to see it. I haven't been there in a while, so I'll be there in July for sure. Picking up my 3 weeks, whatever else that you've been throwing in my car at the time. So I'll reach out by then, and then I'll let everybody know on social media here in Sudbury that I bought in some of the new stuff, so the things that they missed this weekend, they can come back for.
Yeah, that would be great. And definitely do some posts so we can share with our client base that are up in Sudbury as well, so they know where to come to get firsthand tastings of the wine.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we talked about it, remember, like I think it was 2 years ago, about you coming up to do kind of like either doing a walk around tasting or a pre-Christmas thing kind of thing. Because I think especially some of your reds are really spectacular for all the holiday stuff. So yeah, we'll have to talk about that. We'll get that started for maybe.
Yeah, that would be a great excuse to get off the property and come up to Northern Ontario, which is actually where I'm from. I was born in Parry Sound and I grew up in Britt. I don't know if anyone knows where Britt is, but it's about an hour south of Sudbury.
Yeah.
So we would go into the big city. It was to go to Sudbury, and so
Yeah,
we have to go back to my old stomping grounds.
Yeah, no, we'd love to have you. So anyways, thank you very much. I said it's one of our fun little things that we do during the summers, that we get to kind of reconnect with all of our favorite Ontario winemakers, and considering it's Canada Day weekend, so you're kicking off the weekend in the perfect way. So I appreciate it.
Excellent. Well,
Great.
cheers everyone.
Cheers to everybody. Cheers to Ontario wine. I just ran out. Yeah.
Here's to clean wine. Cheers.